Tania Allard. I'm a developer advocate at Microsoft, and I'm going to be talking about a project that I've been brewing for about 3 years now. It basically started like a thing that I thought, oh, I'm just going to do it, and has evolved over time. Something that I always do before my talks is I share the URL. Everything that I always produce is easy buy, so you can use it, reuse it, and adapt as you want. So also if anyone needs to access the slides because accessibility needs or something, you can access them now. And just to give a bit of context about what I'm going to be talking about is, first I want to focus on why we need mentor sprints, why we should start initiatives like this when there are already a lot of hackathons. People are organizing hackathons all the time. There are conference sprints, we organize internal sprints. And then how we actually came with narrowing what the sprints were about and finding a format that works. But saying that it works is very ambiguous. So I'm going to try and distill what has worked, what was a success, where we failed, and how we're actually measuring this works and impact of this sprint. And finally, I want to talk about the future of this project and how we can scale it, or how I'm planning to scale it, which is a crucial part of the community ecosystem, or our ecosystems. And I'm going to just give a tiny bit of background for you to understand where a lot of the things that I will be talking about are coming from. In my introduction has already been mentioned that I work in scientific computing and machine learning, but I've also been doing a lot of high-performance computing and research for a lot of years now. I have a research background, and I work, therefore, with open source communities. I work with people that work very heavily in Python, and R, Julia, and Fortran, because those are the communities where I've been traditionally embedded in, and these are the people that I identify with and that I serve. One of the big problems that all of these communities share is that they're very, very big, but we are not very diverse. Especially the high-performance computing is not diverse at all. It's an old community, so we've been struggling to get new voices and elevate and amplify those voices of the newer community and the broader diverse community and people around us. And I'm by no means going to try to be as eloquent or as entertaining as Don Goodman is, but I do want to focus on some of the issues that we have in open source. And this is, again, to set the context on why this initiative started. Although I focus a lot on open source, and open source is an initiative from the community for the community, and it's intended to serve all the people. And it's all about democratizing knowledge, making things more accessible, and probably use tools to dismantle current systems that are oppressing certain communities. Unfortunately, in the last few years and decades, this has not been the main focus. The main focus has been on code. So code has become the primary object of the open source movement. And this leads to other bigger problems. And one of the biggest problems that we have in our communities is the fallacy of meritocracy. And one definition that is very simple, and I like when I talk about meritocracy, is a society governed by people just selected according to merit. So if we put it in an open source context, if you are a maintainer or a developer of an open source project, and then folks contribute to your project and they send code over or pull requests, then in this meritocracy society, you only evaluate this based on the merit and the characteristic of the code. Like whether it is subject to your style, it's well written, it's testable and stuff. Without taking into consideration any of the background of the person that has contributed to the code. So you're basically erasing their gender, their background, their origin, and the challenges and barriers that they had to overcome. And this ties very much with what Don was talking about, that we are removing the humane part of open source. And these two problems in open source come hand in hand. And it also leads to the privilege dichotomy. because so many people talk about how contributing to open source is a privilege. And they always refer to, well, for you to be able to spend time, you need to be in a good position where you didn't have additional caring responsibilities. So you finish your work, you can go home and spend a few more hours coding. Or you are lucky that your company pays you for you to contribute to open source tools and things of the such. But what happens when these needs or these privileges are not existent? There are a very, very big amount of people that maintain open source software that are making huge sacrifices because they already are taking care of a community, they're already taking care of a project. So they're taking the time that they could be spending with family or with friends to maintain this afloat and make it sustainable. And they're also losing earning potential because they're not being compensated for this additional emotional labor that they also invest in our communities. So having this privilege dichotomy also reinforces the fallacy of meritocracy and therefore the focus on code. So these are really cyclic problems that we're experiencing in our community. And if we refer again to the community, there are many, many groups and many circles of people that interact in it. But I'm going to focus on three primary subsets of them. The first one is the people that are traditionally considered as creators or knowledge drivers. And in this area, we normally tend to associate with maintainers, developers, people that are leading research in a certain area. And once their software or their products are out there and they have a touch license, basically they are allowing the entirety of the world to use and build on those tools. The problem is that then we have another set of people using those tools to satisfy someone's needs. Whatever that needs is, or whatever those interests are that are being served, depend on a very great deal on who's making this decision. And then probably the biggest circle or the biggest layer of community people is those that are open source consumers and open source subjects. And I'm going to give you an example. Nowadays, AI is everywhere, but we have a very small people actually leading research, creating the libraries that power AI and machine learning. Then we have other corporations that are deciding to put AI on our phones, on our cars, everywhere, our microwaves. But then all of the other people that are not traditionally considered to be knowledge creators or drivers or decision makings are still being objects because we're still collecting their data, we're still processing their data, we're still making decisions for them based on these AI systems. And this poses a very, very big problem when we have very little representation of our entire community. So what happens when we have a subset of our community that shares a lot of demographic or background or privilege or sacrifice characteristics in those that are creating the knowledge and are deciding whose interests we're going to be serving? All of the other people that are different or belong to a different group are often just relegated to consume and being affected, probably in negative ways. And one of the problems that this has been happening a lot is because open source has to fight a lot of battles. Usually, we have to fight for sustainability. It's not easy when you are driving on voluntary work, when you are driving on trying to get critical mass to maintain a project that is being used by 7 million of people. Funding and compensation is not equitable. It's very, very hard to justify the impact of an open source project because it's not cited enough. It's very, very difficult to create the dependency graphs and quantify the direct impact. So getting big pools of funding and funding for compensate those that are spending their time and their effort is very, very hard. And I'm not going to get into agency, that's another big problem. But then once people and once projects start getting into sustainability, they start focusing on diversity. So it starts becoming like a secondary or tertiary objective. Whereas in a perfect world, this diversity and sustainability would be together in sustainability and would be a primary goal. And in my community, this is reflected greatly in how much representation we have in leadership positions in open source projects. My friend Anthony Skopats did this analysis. It's mostly around gender. How much diversity in gender we have in those that are the core maintainers or in the governance bodies of big projects. Turned out that we're doing really bad. It's not surprising. And the problem is because we've not been supporting, or these projects have been for so long in that sustainability battle, and they've not been supporting the inclusion of very diverse voices. So this brought me to how can we start? How can we start bringing and amplifying those voices? A critical part is how you onboard them, how you approach them. If you are a regular contributor to open source, or if you've tried to contribute to open source, your first interaction can determine completely if you're gonna engage later. If you go yourself to Sprint and decide, I'm gonna contribute to, let's say, Pandas, and you struggle a lot to get all the dependencies installed in your computer, then you go to the issue tracker and kind of spend 4 hours trying to find one issue that you can work on because they're labeled as easy or first-time contributors, and you read through the issue, you have no idea what's going on. So if you start facing all of these barriers early on, you're less likely to stick around and contribute. So this mentoring sprints really started with all of these people in mind, those that have never had the opportunity to contribute to open source, irregardless of why, irregardless of the reasons why they never had this chance. And finding a time and location for this was critical. In the Python world, something that is very common is that we have the PyCon conferences where you have the main track, there are the talks, and then a few days later, or after the main conference is finished, people stay for 2 or 3 days to contribute and sprint on the projects that they love and they use. It's a great opportunity because maintainers also use these conferences as their annual gathering to share ideas, to improve the roadmap, and work on issues together. But it's so hard, just put yourself in the place of someone that has never contributed to open source. How can I go to my employer and say, well, instead of going 5 days to a conference, I'm going to be there for 9 days because I want to see if I can contribute some code or do some coding. It's very, very hard. Or you have to take some quota of your vacation, but you also have to pay for your lodging and accommodation, so it also becomes very, very challenging. Especially if you then go after those hurdles and then say, well, I'm going to stay here for 2 more days. And it turns out that the first day, it was all dedicated for you to install the dependencies and find one issue that you could work on. So finding a time and location where you could get a support for these individuals was critical. And then we also had to focus on the people that were going to participate. The focus is very problematic saying, I'm going to create mentor sprints for diverse beginners, because it brings a lot of problems. But the focus was on those people that are traditionally from underrepresented communities or underrepresented groups in our community, because they are also the less likely to have received formal mentorship before. They're also the people that are less likely to ask questions in a group of experienced developers or experienced contributors, because we always have the pressure of we have to demonstrate that we're good enough. We have to try twice or thrice as harder to earn our place in the community. But then also saying that we're gonna start a mentorship program is very challenging, especially when you're working with underrepresented communities, because you say, I'm going to start a mentorship program, we're going to serve these groups. Doing that without acknowledging that there is going to be bias is going to be very, very harming. So not only you have to be prepared to mentor those that are willing to contribute, but also those that are going to be guiding them, mentoring them, and onboarding. And we really wanted for the mentors that in these sprints were core contributors, core developers, or just very experienced people that were very familiar with the code bases to be able to take some of the learnings and processes back to their project and aim for sustainability and diversity. And hopefully that will also help them to improve their onboarding processes. So in this case, it's a mentor with a mentor scheme, where everyone is mentored, everyone is supported, everyone is guided, because we want everyone to be successful. And for this to happen, we have three basic pillars, or three bases. The first is establishing a mentorship. We, at the beginning, we just started things like this that are short sprints or short events, you know, that some people are just going to be there for the 4 hours or for the day that it takes. But some others might take that mentorship further. And that's something that we really wanted to encourage by having a very small ratio of attendees to mentors so that they can interact. Also, it's very easy when you're doing sprints to go and measure how many pull requests were submitted during that sprint. But that is not reflective of all of the tasks and activities that are involved in open source. So something that we really focused and we really guided mentors through was to bring a diverse set of issues and a diverse set of tasks that people can contribute to. And that could be anything from code, having some issues really thought through and prepared for that were very low-hanging fruit, but it would help people to start familiarizing with the code base. But we also encourage them to bring, well, let's say you want to improve the logo for your project, bring that as well as an option. Do you have a tutorial that nobody has seen before and you need someone to do a dry run? Bring that over. Are you releasing a new feature of your library as well? Do you need a discussion in depth for a grant that you're writing to attract funds? Bring that over. So the more diverse the tasks that could be involved, also the more diverse the people we could attract and leverage their interests and skills. And by doing so, we also provided a safe environment where everyone can thrive, irregardless on their background, again, their experience. And it's been very rewarding seeing this kind of feedback coming through, where people often, like once again, come and said, one of the reasons I've never contributed open source before is because I thought I was not good enough. But by having these spaces, I've seen that that is not true, that I can do things. And this is a tweet from the mentor sprints for PyCon US, and I was super happy because we had the folks from Adafruit and CircuitPython, and they had some tutorials that they were going to release to the community, and they wanted someone to do a dry run. And we had 2 tables of people hacking on hardware, filing issues, recommending new paths and new parts for tutorials to be added, and they were having a blast of a time. So if we were limiting ourselves to just consider pull requests, all of these contributions that can make a huge difference to onboard your community and your users would have been lost. So for us to be able to get to this structure, it's been really hard. It's not been only me. I've worked with a lot of community people, a lot of friends, people that have been organizing hackathons and sprints for a very long time. And the first iteration was when I was leading the Python course for Code First Girls in Manchester and Sheffield, and a friend was doing it in Leeds. It just happened to coincide with Hacktoberfest. So we said, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could get these people that had never coded before in their life to start contributing to open source projects? And we were doing that as part of the course, and most of the folks completed the Hacktoberfest challenge. And I think some people had only been coding or programming for 4 weeks by that time. And that was incredible. So then the next iteration was using the PyLadies umbrella, the organization that I love and I work a lot with, to start organizing a formal sprint at PyCon UK. This was good, but not as good as it could have been, because although I love PyLadies, when you say PyLadies, that already has a label, and a lot of folks will not feel comfortable self-identifying themselves as a PyLady. because it, again, although it's inclusive and it's meant to support and mentor, encourage women and those who identify themselves as such, it also poses a lot of problems. So that was one of the issues that we had and some feedback. Also, a lot of folks were having an issue, again, the problem of finding the issues to contribute to and work on. But something very, very nice happened that I was not anticipating. And folks that were maintainers of some libraries showed up on the day and they're like, I know that you're running this sprint and I maintain this library. Can I just hang around here? Can I just help? Can I just mentor? And I was like, okay, yeah, cool, fine. Remember, we have the code of conduct, we have this stuff, blah, 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 and they're here to help. Like, we are here for the people. And it was incredible to see the effect that it had, just having those folks that were so familiar with the code base and were so willing to help. Like, that changed completely the atmosphere. So that's how we started this idea of bring the mentors, bring the people in the room. And then we brought this, I started pretty much bothering people in the Manchester meetup scene to start organizing this again at Hacktoberfest, bring their members, grow it up. And that eventually led to this being part of the PyCon US Hatchery program. And the Hatchery program is an initiative to start finding other events that could eventually become a staple event of the PyCon conferences. It was very scary because PyCon US is the biggest Python conference, and we opened the call. We thought probably 3 people are going to show up. We're probably not going to have a lot of projects interested in. So we did a lot of advertising. We got a lot of people signing up, and we were asking those that were signing up to contribute what their interests were, what their area of expertise was, if they had any projects or any scope that they wanted to contribute to. And that helped us a lot to target specific projects or specific maintainers that we knew that were going to be at PyCon to take part. We ended up with 13 different mentoring projects in this program, going from GNU Mailman to the PyPA warehouse to Volume TensorFlow. We had a very, very, very big range of projects. And we had over 100 people signed up. We had to turn down people at the entrance because we physically didn't have enough space. And that was a very, very rewarding experience, which led to opportunities to rerun this in scientific computing conferences like SciPy, EuroSciPy. And that's where a lot of the maintainers started talking to me and were like, well, we have this problem. All of our core contributors and maintainers are white, cis men. How do you get all of these people to come here? And how can we onboard them for the long term? So that gave me another idea, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in the final remarks. So now the Hacktoberfest has become a staple event where we run these mentor sprints and conferences as well, because they give these places where people meet together and in a very consistent timing where you can plan ahead. But what's next? This is something that is interesting. What's next? We're going to carry on with the standalone projects for Hacktoberfest and conferences, and we're starting a pilot program where we're going to focus on specific projects. These are some of the conferences that we're working on. But for us to be able to attack this, we have to follow up with mentors, understand what has helped them, start scaling up and creating mentor sprints in a box for anyone to be able to run their own mentor sprints, because I can't go to every conference. My co-organizers can't go to every conferences, but it would be even much better if we could empower anyone to run similar initiatives in their conferences, in their communities, for their people. And aiming for sustainability. And for this, it's critical for us to start partnering up with organizations like NonFocus, Alive, Software Sustainability Institute, and Python Software Foundation to establish programs where those that are onboarded into short-term mentorship can eventually become part of a longer-term mentorship, and we can start funding and compensating them appropriately so that sustainability and diversity become one single umbrella for all of the projects. And this is what we're going to be focusing on 2020. And I would love for this to go beyond my communities. I would love for this to become a staple in all PyCons, in many, many conferences. And I also want to invite you to think how this would look for your community, how you could integrate this in your community, and how we can make this better for you. So thank you very much. And if you want to talk about this or anything else, please reach out.